Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Estrella Natural Processed Colombia from Standout Coffee. There's the container right there. And Standout, based out of Stockholm, Sweden. And this is part one of a 24-part KaffeBox Advent Calendar series that will include 2 reviews today, 2 reviews tomorrow, and then a review every day until December 24th. And this is my favorite series of the year, as it gives us an opportunity to review 24 different coffees from 12 different Scandinavian coffee roasters, including a place like Standout that has only appeared on this channel one time before. And that was during our 700 subscriber special when we tested out their 720-hour fermentation processed Diego Bermudez coffee, which this is a little bit more normal of a coffee, although it is a natural processed Colombian coffee, which tends to be some of my least favorite coffees in general. This is of the Gesher variety, which does make it a higher end version of that coffee. So we will see how a combination of those factors plays out. And the way that this will work is the tasting wheel and the notes are all done with the V60, and then the second cup is brewed with the Chemex. We're going to stick to pretty standard recipes unless we find something different from either KaffeBox's Instagram page or the Coffee Roaster's website. And in this case, we did find a recipe from Standout, which was a 15 grams in to 250 grams out, or about a 16.67 to 1 water to coffee ratio. And we went standard 205 degrees Fahrenheit, 96 degrees Celsius. Now, in terms of roast profile for these coffees, since they are Scandinavian coffee roasters, they are going to be on the lighter side in general. And this one was no exception to that, as even with the natural fermentation, you could tell that this one was lighter roasted than normal. With all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. First impression right from the onset was very much a lot of the red berry characteristics that are pretty typical for a lot of natural processed Colombian coffees, although it came out a little bit more clean than expected. There was an additional bit of great depth and complexity to the cup, as you were able to pick up on some slightly bitter fruit characteristics to it as well. Reminded me a little bit of grapefruit as well as lemon, so that contributed to some more depth to the cup, in addition to some slight mango-like characteristics, although a little bit more in the background and less pronounced than the more abundant red fruit components. In addition to that, there was an herbal florality, and given that this cup of coffee is very red forward, it definitely came off in a very red sense, reminding me a fair bit of hibiscus. Now, in this second coffee, the one brewed through the Chemex, it does come out a little less clean and a little bit more red fruit forward, as you're not able to pick up on a little bit more of the additional characteristics that you can feel in the cup from the V60. But there are some additional factors within that V60 as well, including a slight tropicality to the cup as well. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. All right, and 3 level 4s, so let's go through those real quick. The finish level 4, and yes, there have been so many natural processed Colombian coffees that are a little too heavy and overbearing, so having that at the level 4 mark is a really good start. Now, while this coffee does have a fair bit of a lasting finish, it definitely doesn't come off too heavy and overbearing, so that's a really good start for this coffee. In addition to the sweetness, which is another thing that oftentimes can be a little too heavy and overbearing for natural processed Colombian coffees. So having both of those things be at that level 4 mark does go to show that this coffee wasn't quite as intense as a lot of other natural Colombians, but that is also in line with the berry fruit being somewhat toned down at that level 4. Now, this was by far the most pronounced and dominant characteristic within this coffee, something that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of, but having it be a little less dominant, pronounced when compared to a lot of the additional components to this coffee is a very good thing for me, because it does give the opportunity for the coffee to have a little bit more depth and complexity to it. And you can see that throughout the rest of this tasting wheel, as you have a fair bit of things at the level 3 mark as well. We'll start with the body, which through the Chemex, it's definitely lower. I would definitely put it at the level 2 with the Chemex. Although it was kind of in the middle at about a 2.5, I bumped it up to a 3 because it just felt a little closer to the 3 than the 2 in terms of the body. Acidity is an interesting one, because they went to the lengths of describing this coffee as having an elegant acidity, although I found the acidity to be a little bit more middle grounded as opposed to pretty pronounced. That could be because it was very much overshadowed by the red fruit characteristics within this coffee, but even then, you're still able to pick up a little bit of that acidity within this cup. Florality, level 3, something we discussed briefly, but definitely present in this coffee, given that it was a very red-forward cup of coffee. Had a slight bit of herbality to kind of complement the florality. Definitely can see that in the hibiscus sense, so really like it there at that level 3 mark. Citrus fruit, level 3, second most pronounced fruit characteristic in this coffee, second to the very strong berry components to it, so like it there at that mark. Stone fruit, probably being a little generous. What mango I was able to pick up from this coffee was definitely more subdued than the other fruit characteristics within this coffee. And then probably the most important thing in this entire tasting wheel is the cleanliness at a level 3. Yes, natural processed Colombian coffees typically tend to score in the 1 to 2 mark, and this is likely attributed to the fact that this is the Gesha variety, which oftentimes is on the cleaner side of things. So I feel like that did a really good job of maybe keeping a lot of these additional factors toned down while still maintaining a little bit of clarity. Less clarity through the Chemex. I still think it would maybe be on the lower side of the level 3. If I was being a little rough, I could push that all the way down to the level 2 mark. But in general, it's a little bit more clean than a lot of other natural processed Colombian coffees. So this tasting wheel looks good to me in terms of the V60, but it is very different when brewed through the Chemex. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I definitely liked it more than I like a lot of other natural processed Colombian coffees, which I've kind of said it's typically not my flavor profile to begin with. I don't necessarily love a lot of the red fruit characteristics, especially the more strong red berry components to it. So having this dialed back a little bit is one of the reasons why I'm going to like this significantly more than a lot of other natural processed Colombian coffees. Even then, still not necessarily my favorite, although I think that this is significantly better than a lot of the other ones. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to. It actually makes it a very easy recommend because I know a lot of people have really loved the strong vibrancy that comes with these natural processed coffees, specifically those very strong red fruit characteristics, but maybe they've been a little too overbearing to you recently, so finding something that maybe tones that back ever so slightly while providing a little bit more clarity and a little bit more depth to the cup is something that you would want to explore, because I feel like this coffee did a very good job of it. It's kind of that middle ground where I know it's not too natural like for me, in the sense that I could drink probably an entire bag of this coffee and I would find some more additional characteristics to it, while at the same time not thinking that it lacks any sort of vibrancy or flavor. So seems like a really good middle ground for that. But I think for the most part, I will leave this review at that. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the La Estrella Natural Processed Colombia from Standout Coffee. Thank you for watching.